Nell Daly is the social worker turned venture capitalist. You are quoted for saying every entrepreneur has a revenge story. Do you have a revenge story?
Yes. So it started with like the Tyra show, and then it led to Entertainment Tonight, CNN, and then I ended up being on Fox, starting to get quite a few death threats. My mom started to get very ill. I said, I'm going to back off TV. I would lie in bed at night going, what am I going to do about this? I've got to peace out. And that's what the system does. To accomplish the next set of goals that I have, which is to go into venture capital, I have to just be so laser focused. Ambition in itself is inconvenient. Being a fund for the people, I cannot find money for women here. Women in particular in the UK last year got less than 2% of funding. I was like, where is this money? I called on 248 venture firms. And I privately WhatsApped him and I said, is there any way you could have lunch with me? I'm here because I need introductions. Oh my God, this is a moment. And I basically said, I need $10 million. He called me the next day and said, I'll give you your $10 million. I always say that there's the plan and the secret plan. It's a really weird thing to be a psychotherapist. So you have to tap into the spiritual side of who people are. I think women breathing is an act of protest. What do you do with adversity? Let's face it, like if you don't get to fulfill your dreams, that eats at your soul.
Nell Daly is the social worker turned venture capitalist and co-founder of the sector-agnostic Global Impact Fund with 50 million to invest in overlooked founders and their disruptive ideas. She classes herself as an advocate for the underdogs and works with policymakers for a fairer world. Nell, my absolute pleasure to have your lovely face.
Thank you.
Welcome. She's actually just flown in from New York. Very jealous. She doesn't have any jet lag. So you look amazing. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Let's kick off with Revenge Capital, your investment thesis. Tell us more about what you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, we got, this beautiful thing going, essentially, right? We started a fund. And we raised over 50 million. And I always forget, like I could convert it into US dollars, what that actually means. I had to ask my team the other day, is that like 70 million USD? Because I always talk in pounds.
Right.
So used to working, in the UK. And we are looking to invest in founders that have been traditionally overlooked, but we're truly inclusive. So I always say if like two bros come to me with a great idea that has impact, I'll say yes to it if I think it's a good idea and it's solving a major issue that we're facing, because I want to be totally inclusive. I don't want to exclude anybody.
Amazing. So can you give us a bit more detail on how you're defining overlooked?
It's pretty much how everyone would define overlooked. So people who are not well networked, who haven't had the ability to raise capital in the past. So let's talk about women. Let's talk about the disabled community. LGBTQIA+. We like to look at founders who are, and I'm not strict about this guideline, but who are younger and older. So people who are under the age of 25 or perhaps over 50, which I'm approaching at this point.
Wow, you definitely don't look.
Thank you. Thank you. And am I forgetting anybody? The BIPOC community, which we say BIPOC in the US, but the BAME community here.
Yeah.
So those are sort of the general overarching groups.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Amazing. So you've recently announced this. What was the official, I think it was the official launch date, your birthday?
Yes, it was.
What date was that?
Yeah, December 2nd.
Wow, incredible. Yeah. So I'm so genuinely curious. How did you set up your fund? How did you secure that 50 million? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Again, you're not from that world of finance. You're
No.
not the male, pale and stale. Like, where do you begin?
The male, pale and stale. That is such a good one.
You've not heard of that one. Maybe that's a British little.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good one. So do you want to know the story?
Yeah.
Let's tell stories. Stories are always the most interesting things to hear.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was in the UK and it was a year ago, and I was searching for money for a beauty founder. I really believed in her product. I still do. And I flew over to the UK on my own to sort of do a tour of venture capital groups. Even as somebody who had already been in this space, because this is technically a second fund for me, it's not my first fund. And I can tell you about my other endeavor before I did Revenge. That kind of got my feet wet in the space before I launched my own fund. I was over here and I could not raise capital in the UK for her. I was like, where is this money? I called on 248 venture firms, high net worth individuals or family offices, by creating Excel spreadsheets and are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah,
Are you clean? It's okay. It's okay. Are you sure?
This is the adults listening.
I'm like asking you at the Amplify. So it's just much more efficient if I'm myself. So yeah. So I was on PitchBook and I create spreadsheets. Like I don't think that there's like some sort of magic to this. People make you think there is, but I literally got on PitchBook. And for those of you who don't know what PitchBook is software that a lot of investment banks use or people can use to look at who invests in deals. It's just software. It's very, very easy to use. It's kind of can be expensive. I had a subscription to it through somebody I knew. And so I was on PitchBook and I looked up lists of venture capital groups that invested in beauty. I couldn't find anybody after calling everybody to see who invests in the beauty space still in the UK in particular. So US venture capital firms typically won't make investments across border, especially early on. And there's various reasons for that. So the pool of capital is much smaller in the UK that you can dip into. And I had been trying. It was exhausting. And I thought, I know the climate's changed from 2 years before that. But why is this so hard? So I came over and I started trying to meet with venture firms actually and say like, what are you investing in? I would take detailed notes on these spreadsheets, right? Like this is their mandate. This is what they're looking for. This is their investment thesis. This is the checks that they write out. And through another deal that I was working on, there was a guy sitting at a table and a few months before that. And I privately WhatsApped him and I said, is there any way you could have lunch with me? Because I was having trouble getting meetings with some of those venture firms and thought this guy might be able to help get me into one. He said, of course, I'll have breakfast with you, very polite. And through that breakfast, during it, I said, you know, I'm here because I need introductions into a certain amount of venture firms. Assuming he's a tax accountant, would you be able to help me? You might know somebody there. And he said, which one? And I said, one particular. And he said, I started that 30 years ago.
Wow.
And then he said, no, what do you need? Why are we having breakfast? And immediately I had to switch into, oh my God, this is a moment that I could take. And I basically said, I need $10 million else I'm leaving the UK. I said, I cannot find money for women here. And I've gone to syndicate groups and angel groups, and they're mostly just investing in tech. You know, I can't see where they're looking at consumer. I don't even really see it. Like it was very hard for me to find as an outsider. And I was sort of using my journalist hat to do research on the space. And he called me the next day and said, I'll give you your 10 million. I essentially said, and this is not a slight to the UK at all, because part of my home is here now and my heart is very much here, is that I could do more business in New York and Miami and LA in a day than I was being able to do in the UK.
Yeah, I'm not at all surprised to hear it.
Yeah, and I feel badly saying that.
No, don't.
Then after sort of raising the fund and getting it secured, and then it ended up, you know, now it's a $50 million fund.
Yeah.
With money for follow-on capital, and we set up the documentation to do fund 2 already, which will be institutional capital. Because so many people came to us and said, wow, you're doing this. Can we come on?
Wow.
And we wanted to keep fund 1 private and fund 2 will be institutional.
Wow.
That starting to do sort of deeper research into the space, I realized that women in particular in the UK last year got less than 2% of funding.
Yeah, exactly. If you're tuning into this right now, then first of all, a big heartfelt thank you. I really appreciate it. And secondly, there's a very high chance that you're on your own entrepreneurial journey right now. So whether you're a first-time founder and you're figuring things out and you feel like you're on your own, or if you've done it before and realized that actually this whole entrepreneurship business is a lot easier said than done, then I might be able to help you. If you feel like you vibe with my energy and feel like you need some of that professional big sister direction, support and advice, then I'm opening up a few select spots for that one-to-one coaching, mentorship and growth strategy for ambitious founders. There's a link in the show notes, so check it out and I would love to hear from you. All right, let's get back to the episode. We're all kind of blue in the face with like repeating the same sort of statistics over and over, and I think it's always...
By the way, it's not much better in the US.
Yeah, exactly. Like
So,
right?
It's double. But like, what are we saying here? And I think
Should we feel grateful?
Yeah, and I was at the House of Lords yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah. They did a meeting about the Women's Initiative.
Yeah,
that they're kind of starting to roll out, which is very
the
interesting.
Debbie Raskow.
Yeah,
Amazing.
Yeah, and we can talk more in depth about that.
Yeah,
because I've actually learned quite a bit and had a nice call with Debbie about it. But what's interesting there is that, you know, you sort of look at what's happening in the UK and you think how much forward movement has there been over the last 10 years? And the same is happening in the US, that we're all kind of like beating the same drum, but what's really going on here?
Yeah. And I think you are so uniquely qualified to actually comment on the state of both the US and the UK, having your direct experience and doing the same kind of work in both places. I'm not at all surprised to hear it. You beat me to the punch on that story because I did my research and I was going to ask you about that one particular breakfast meeting that changed everything. So I love how these things happen. I think it's also testament to getting out there, networking. I loved also how you mentioned putting on your journalistic hat and having that sort of researcher and just being a detective and finding stuff out and information gathering. Did you feel like you needed that first validation, that first person to say yes, to then kind of open the floodgates to everything else? Was that kind of a real validation that everyone else needed to have? Or was it just simply like, right, okay, we're snowballing now?
The fund is just one LP, so I didn't have to go out and source more capital on the back of that.
Right.
I have had to do that in previous deals before.
Right.
In this particular case, that's not the case. And when we start to go for institutional, depending on how big we want a fund to be, an institution could come in for quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
Or we might have to pair a couple of institutions together to raise fund two. Make no mistake, and I'm a huge believer in A, saying things out to the universe, and B, even more, writing things on a piece of paper. And I think you have to be very careful what you write on a piece of paper. It's like, be careful what you ask for, because that shit comes true.
Yeah.
And it might not come true on your timeline. Like, the universe might have a different timeline for it, but as a psychotherapist, I saw this over 12 years of sitting with people and listening to their life stories, how things played out.
Do you have a crazy instance of that where you've written something down? And
100%.
What's a crazy 100%. One you can share now?
Oh, God. One's very personal.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, I mean, the fund, just the fund in general. Yeah.
You wrote that down?
Oh, 100%.
Did you go into specifics with like 50 million or?
I didn't necessarily put a money number on it, although I did put a money number on a book deal that I want. And I'm very curious to see how that's going to go out. And I wrote that 5 years ago on a piece of paper. And that book deal didn't kind of come in to play at that point, but I have a feeling coming up there will be one, and I'm curious to see what the number will end up being on that. But I have found it with kind of everything if you write it down. And I believe I was listening to the founder of Spanx recently, and she gave a graduation speech. And again, I haven't gone back to the original study that was done, but Harvard did a study many years ago. And they looked at a class, and those that wrote down their goals were the top 5%. Have you heard about that? Which I thought was really, and I think I recently heard from my business partner, Andrew, that Jeff Bezos is in that cohort of who was studied.
There were 3 groups in this I think, I know what you're talking about.
And there was one group that actually wrote down what their goals were.
Yeah.
And they were like the 5% most successful in that
Exactly.
cohort.
Yeah. Because there was, I'm trying to remember, something like they'd written it down from the start, one group, one wrote it down at the end, and one like never did, and butchering it. But that was a really powerful study. What do you think the explanation is behind that? Like, how do you rationalize manifesting?
I can't, except like I think there must be some sort, I mean, we could get so woo-woo here, and I'm not opposed to doing that. And I can tell you, I mean, I think it's a really weird thing to be a psychotherapist, because you're sitting in people's souls day in and day out. You're like, it's soul work. And so you kind of have to tap into the spiritual, not kind of, you have to tap into the spiritual side of who people are. You're dealing with grief, you're dealing with loss, you're dealing with transition, you're dealing with people's deeply personal symptoms that they're facing. And we can talk about mental health too, in terms of entrepreneurship and what that means for women in business or people who have been traditionally marginalized, because let's face it, like, if you don't get to fulfill your dreams, that eats at your soul. And that is really probably at the core of why I'm doing what I'm doing. But I think that I had the unique perspective of, again, watching people manifest or not manifest things in their life. And I think those people who kind of have a clear direction when they write it down. And I haven't always known like the exact vision, but I think if you just write it down, there's some sort of like natural alignment that you're moving towards it in a different way. And I also just believe that the more you speak it, the more you believe it, then the more people around you believe it. And then the more that the collective energy sort of supports that work. And and the tide rises to you.
Yeah.
As opposed to you just like swimming wherever it takes you.
Right. Unsurprisingly, what struck me listening to you there is the feminine intelligence and the feminine energy, which is just, you are clearly such an outlier with what you've achieved and this fund. You're operating in this male-dominated space, but it's really refreshing, you know, and much needed to hear this more. And by feminine energy, I don't mean obviously linked purely to being a woman. We've all got the masculine and feminine energies, but
the intuitive side.
Right, all of that. You talk about soul, the intuition, and the manifestation piece. You know, that can go one of either way. You can either go woo-woo, which is sort of where you're leaning towards. I know the neuroscience that backs it up. I know the focus, kind of, it's the same thing, right? Coming at it from different angles, but just how it focuses the mind. So you said, so going back to the fund, you said that you'd written that down, you know, be careful what you wish for and what you write down.
Yeah.
What can others take away from the steps that you took to achieve what you have done? Because you are in such a minority. You know, you had this, you know, fluke, if you like, of this breakfast deal, but you made it happen. You put yourself out there. So we touched on like the American energy, that journalistic background. Like, if we can try and unpack and break down, like, what were the ingredients that have helped you get to where you are now, especially in the past like year?
Yeah, I think that there's a few things. I will say that there's always, I don't really believe in a work-life balance at all. I believe that if you find something you're passionate about, it doesn't feel like work. And I'm sorry, that sounds so corny, but I am hugely driven by being intellectually stimulated. And I have an insatiable level of curiosity. And not everybody does. And I can't tell you how many times I've sat at my desk and go like, die, ambition, die. Because ambition in itself is inconvenient.
Yeah. It's easier to not have it, isn't it?
Very inconvenient.
Just be content.
Yes. Yes. Am I ever going to be satisfied? And it can be very inconvenient to your personal life, to motherhood.
Get that, yeah.
Right? To the people who don't believe in you. It's like very irritating, right? Who want you to like stay in a box and like not evolve as a human being.
Yeah.
You know, and so like if we were to really have a heartfelt conversation, like let's talk about like how women's ambition can like destroy family relationships or, you know, cause a lot of friction in society. I think women breathing is an act of protest, to be honest, and especially in certain countries, right? We know that now. Yeah. So I think that it's having that curiosity. I have a lot of drive. So I think if you would ask me a year ago or 2 years ago, I'd be like, oh, I don't know, maybe like a more meek answer. But the reality is I've like worked my ass off for this. Yeah. But I honestly feel like the cause needs more leaders. And I've crossed that age gap where now you can kind of go back into the community as an elder and say like, no, I can do this. And I can make sure that we can secure a better future for our children, essentially. So it's working around the clock. It's curiosity. And I think the other piece of this that's so important is the openness to networking. Like if I could give one piece of advice, and I think, and I could get crucified for saying this, I don't want to get canceled for saying it, but in the UK, I have found that the women are much more open to networking than men. Oh, okay. Just naturally. They share their contacts more openly. They're free with it. They're like, let's meet for coffee. Let's meet for lunch. There's just and I think that comes from like there's a need, right? Like our backs up are against the wall. If like you want to make something happen, you're going to have to like go out there and actually make connections and like see how you can open up a pathway forward. Where I have found in other circumstances with generally European men and UK men, it's more difficult. Where in the US, if you go to like the Bitcoin conference in Miami, if you go into any conferences in like California, Silicon Valley, LA, you know, Chicago, San Diego, everyone's exchanging cards. There's just like a level of general enthusiasm that I think, you know, when I meet Brits, generally they're like, what the fuck? Like her light, like what is she?
I totally get it.
Is she on something? And sometimes I'll go to a restaurant here and I actually have to tone I have to tone it down, right?
I mean, there is this, whenever we go on holiday, especially within Europe, there's one loud voice we can hear.
It's an American.
It's often in an American accent.
Yeah, I hear it too. Yeah, I'm in line at the airport going, oh my God, really? It's so embarrassing, yeah.
But I do, as much as I have such a quintessentially British accent, I always half joke about being spiritually American, and the times that I visited the States, I'm like, these are my people making things happen.
Yeah.
It's hard enough as it is without others adding this other layer of difficulty and retention to it.
Yeah.
You mentioned saying kind of like, a couple of years ago, you might have given a bit more of like a neat answer. We touched on just before we started rolling, you having exploded onto the scene seemingly out of nowhere. You went dark for 5 years. So what happened there?
Two things happened coincidentally. So I have a master's in fine art and creative writing from Columbia. And I only talk about this because they have a very good journalism school. So some of what you do is in the journalism space. And I always toyed with, do I want the MFA so I could teach on the college level? I had to literally pull myself out of academia. I'm very academically minded and love academia. I could study. I could have like 1,000 degrees. I could sit in a library all day long. So I decided to get my MFA, and then I got a teaching job at NYU. And when I was at NYU teaching writing, I ended up doing my MSW in social work. There was a decision I had to make whether I was going to try to go back to do a post-bac to do medicine and become a doctor, or do something that was slightly less intensive. I wanted to start to have a family, so it wasn't really going to work out. So I did my MSW. And I naturally took those two disciplines, and as I knew people in New York, they would say, can you commentate on the networks for us? So it started with like the Tyra show, and then it led to Entertainment Tonight, and then it led to CNN, and then I ended up being on Fox quite a bit. Fox was really interesting for me because I'm much more of I would say like a British journalist, where I just believe in reporting the facts, not necessarily on commentating like you do in cable news in the States, which, by the way, is illegal here. You guys don't have this. We have this whole thing called cable news. And I really liked it because people would naturally think that I'm very progressive. I'm actually an independent. So in the Revenge, the fund is a nonpartisan organization. We don't align with either party, whether it's in the UK or in the US or globally. We will take conservative founders and we'll take liberal founders. Like we do not discriminate. That's the whole premise of Revenge, right? It's a non-discriminatory fund. So I started doing a lot of television on Fox, which I thought was cool because you could kind of slip in this different sort of messaging. And I wasn't afraid to have nuanced debate. And I really like that about myself. I like the fact that as a psychotherapist, you're incredibly tolerant of people's opinions. You're incredibly tolerant about the way they choose to live their life. You know, in the Times article, I talk about learning to sweat down my back. There's things I had heard in my office for 10 years that were like, I didn't even know people could do. Let's talk about like sex parties or things that, I started when I was pretty green in New York, and you heard all kinds of stories, and some that you might actually like have a problem with, but you don't show that because you're holding space for someone to experience their own story in front of you, and you're there just to listen and to help sort of put the pieces on a table together of their story so they can make sense of it. Yeah. And so I started doing Fox, and with that, no matter what I said, what they do on Fox is on cable news, they have a bunch of younger people in production writing the tickers underneath what you're saying. And it's very effective. So sometimes the tickers don't even match what the host is saying, but they're a bit inflammatory. And it can happen on any network, any cable news show, any actual show in particular. And I ended up starting to get quite a few death threats from doing that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because of the inflammatory, like, ticker underneath.
Because that's how you sell, right? That's how you sell. You get the ratings up. It's contentious. It seems contentious, even if it's not a contentious conversation. Right. I was sort of there to be the counterpoint generally on most stories, even if there was no counterpoint, even if I was just reporting on sort of legislation that came through about the LGBTQIA community. I started getting quite a few death threats. This was when Trump was starting to run for his first presidency, and they were generally around sexual violence. So many times when women are threatened, privately, in these cases, it has to do with, pretty violent crimes. And it makes you take a step back, and it's quite effective in silencing someone, because as a woman, as a single mom, I had 3 kids, And my mother at the time had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. So I was living with my mother. And I would lie in bed at night going, oh my God, I've just been on Fox. These things are coming through my phone, my feeds, my social feeds. What would I do? And so you can put yourself on the radar of the local police and you can call the authorities that you need to and report it. But ultimately, you're incredibly vulnerable as a woman. And so at a certain point when my mom started to get very ill, I said, I'm going to back off TV. I didn't know at that point that I would back off completely from social media, because I had spent quite a bit of time sort of building community and believed in it and believed in the profile and the messaging that you could do through social media. When she passed away, I really honed in and said to myself, to accomplish the next set of goals that I have, which is to go into venture capital, I have to just be so laser focused. And so many women, so many people know that social media, as much as it's crucial, is also a massive time suck. Yeah. And it can cause an enormous financial burden to people, especially fledgling entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. And so I just cut out the fat. Mm-hmm. Like anything that I felt like was going to detract me from doing what I needed to do to accomplish this fund, I was just going to let it go. Okay. So I got really zoned in on that. And if you ask me one regret, there's probably a bit of regret that I didn't go back to it earlier, because I do believe in the power of a personal brand and continuing personal messaging. And I miss the people that I had in the community, and I had built some really great things that you sort of let die. But on the other hand, it worked out.
It did work out. I was going to say,
yeah.
I mean, you don't have too much regret on that, because you have made a splash, and the people who were hanging out, that like, they're still there, and you've made this huge comeback. And I think you're more than making up for it now with the press and everything else. Now, what a crazy story. I was not expecting any of that.
Yeah.
How gut-wrenching. Just going back to just these death threats, I'm so curious, especially with your psychotherapy background. How did you mentally and emotionally cope with that?
You know, what was unfortunate about it is that I didn't have, I think if you're a woman in journalism, you probably have other journalists just naturally in your network that you can call and talk to, and there's support, whether it's through the network or through CNN. For some reason, I really internalized it, and I was quiet. Like, I didn't reach out to anybody and say, like, the producers knew it was happening because they would see my phone blow up the minute I finished, being on air. Right. They would see it start to happen, but I never reached out. I never said.
Why do you think you did that?
I just don't even think,
like, to not be a burden.
Yeah. And I have 3 kids, and like, you leave the studio, and the next thing you know, you're in a car and you're heading home, and you're making, hot dogs and hamburgers for your kids, and you're answering phone calls for clients, and you're working on other things. So I think I just sort of parked it, and it would be late at night when you'd sit there looking at the ceiling, and I ended up getting a taser flashlight. I never got a gun, which we can have in the U.S. I was too afraid to have a gun in the house. And I also did a lot of psychotherapy for people who were part of the Sandy Hook tragedy. So we could have a whole nother podcast on guns in America. For the listeners who don't know, Sandy Hook was a tragedy that happened where a middle school boy went into an elementary school in the state of Connecticut, where I'm from and live near, and killed quite a few children and teachers and school administrators. I can't remember the exact date when it happened, but about a decade ago now. And so I would lie in bed at night going, what am I going to do about this? And as much as you can alarm your house, going out to your car, going to the grocery store, it only takes one. And to layer that, I'm a psychotherapist, so I know the fragility of someone's mental health deeply, right? It's what I did for a living for over a decade. So I was very conscious that this could be really tragic for people involved if the 1%, decided to act upon their impulse and do something to me. And so I said, I've got to, until I'm better equipped to do something like that, I've got to peace out. And that's what the system does.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So like that is an exact kind of great case example of how misogyny in our society and chauvinism, can absolutely win, because they took a voice, by the way, that wasn't necessarily a voice that was conservative, which this would mostly happen when I was on Fox, not the other way. And they took it off air.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
Yeah.
which is a real shame.
Such a shame now. No, it is. Yeah, I get it. Kudos to you for bouncing back, because I can only imagine. I just empathize with just how scary, just as a woman to begin with, as a mum on top of that, the list goes on and on. The psychotherapy experience helps you. You've got the head as well as the heart going on as well. So it sounds so incredibly scary. And we need to pick ourselves back up again afterwards, right? We can only be silenced for so long. So coming back to revenge capital, how does your psychotherapist background make you a better investor?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Bartlett, you can sit back down.
How does that happen? I think that I'm so relationship driven, and our investment thesis is about investing in people. And I know that sounds so cheesy and people say it all the time, but I really think that an idea you can have a great idea, but you can be a terrible operator or a terrible human being, or you can be a great person and like not such a great operator. As a therapist, you have I don't want to make anybody feel like who comes in to pitch us an idea that I'm psychoanalyzing them at all, because you don't do that. Like, and that's like kept me back. Like, no one told me in school, like, people are going to be kind of afraid of you because they're going to think you're psychoanalyzing them. And by the way, like, it doesn't work that way. Like, when you're in practice, you're like deeply in practice. And when you're out of it, it's like, it's as dramatic as sort of like having a bathing suit on to go swimming and then like having all your clothes on and not by a pool, right? It's like a totally different scenario. So when people come in, I do think though that I have the ability to develop rapport pretty quickly with people, because that's what you do as a psychotherapist. You have to gain their trust, and you have to create a space where you're really listening to their story and you're taking it in, and you're able to ask questions to really derive the information you need to be able to give a baseline of how somebody's doing. And so I think I can apply all that strategy to a founder that I'm working with, and I can teach my team how to do the same thing. Yeah. So I think that that's probably the most helpful part of it. And I think also just having like a very strong passion about helping the underdog, about being a fund for the people. And that's not bullshit, right? Like, I've lived and breathed and eaten this for my entire career. When you go into social work, you work in populations that have gotten the short end of the stick. You work with, I started my career early in HIV/AIDS. I started working in, housing projects in Red Hook, Brooklyn. You start working with the poor, the disenfranchised, the traditionally marginalized, people who've gone through a lot because of just how they were born and the circumstances to which they find themselves that were totally out of their own control. And so to help those people, you really like, it's in the fiber of your being to hear someone's story and to say like, there's a moment here where we could really affect change with what this person is bringing to the table. And it doesn't mean that every person that we invest in has this like idea that's going to solve climate change, or we're not sort of a direct impact fund in that way. It's just, for me, I always say that there's the plan and the secret plan. The secret plan is to be able to make those people money so they can reinvest it back into their communities, you hope, or be able to strike a check to somebody who they care about to be a policymaker if they don't end up running for politics themselves.
Love that. That completely resonates. But there's research to back up, again, the case for female founders in particular, right?
Yeah,
women,
we need more leaders.
Yeah, the more millionaire women, the more economically empowered women, the better it is for the planet. The research has shown that we invest back into our communities, into charitable projects. So I totally get that and love the mission.
And I think that, in the case of women, one of the things that pisses me off, there's a lot, but one of the big things that pisses me off is that I cannot stand to see people in general, but women in particular, and especially women with children, in vulnerable positions because they're in toxic relationships with either men or bosses, and they can't get out of them because they don't have financial independence. And that full stop is probably at really the heart of my mission. And then that translates into anybody who's felt like they've had to kind of like take it because they didn't have the money to say, I want to walk away from this. This is not serving me anymore.
Yeah, money
or
is
it's actually very unhealthy for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Money is a tool. It gives you that optionality to walk away from situations that you need to get out of. And I think that the way that we have been socially conditioned and how money is still a taboo. I love talking about all this as well because it's all a farce. It's all a construct to keep out the others, the marginalized. So I'm fully behind your mission. I love it. Absolutely support it.
Yeah, and we can play this game right now where what happens as a female founder or marginalized founder, but again, let's talk about gender because it's just an easy case example but how many times as a woman, and you've been in business before, you go into a meeting and you say, I really need X, Y, and Z in terms of money. And the person you're talking to, whether they're male or female, is conditioned to say, I think I have a cousin in Silicon Valley who has an aunt who invests in women. Let's flip the script. Just imagine a man
How ridiculous.
going to a meeting and has somebody across the table saying to them, I think I know a guy who lives in Tennessee who might invest in
a man. Yeah, it's so reductive. This is the bee in my bonnet as well, is how reductive this demographic. It's, and as a marketeer formally as well, I've already got a bee in my bonnet around like demographics versus psychographics. And it's like, set up a marketing campaign for like ABC1 demographic for like 18 to 35. It's so reductive to your point there. It's like I've been in situations where positively I've either won business pitches with my last agency or made it to the final rounds, and the client response on more than one occasion has been along the lines of, we wanted more kind of female voices, more kind of women involved. Even as an agency owner, like we wanted women involved, and it didn't sit right with me, and there was an immediate sort of repellent reaction to that, and I think after processing it for a bit, that's when I realized I had that light bulb moment where I was like, you're reducing me down to something so honestly uninteresting and irrelevant about me. The fact, like, my genitalia is like 1% of what makes up who I am and everything I can give to the world. So I totally get your point. But I think it's just a sad reflection of the current situation. You are quoted for saying every entrepreneur has a revenge story. Do you have a revenge story?
Yes. I have a revenge story every day. I was saying, I say all the time, like, give me the hour, give me the day. Like, there's something happening in my head where I'm like, ooh, that person scorned me. I'm going to show them. And I think, listen, I mean, we could pick a million out of a hat, but I think that what's more interesting, and at some point, like, I could share a revenge story, but what's more interesting is, like, what do you do with adversity?
Yeah.
What do you do with it? Right? Like, because I think the most dangerous thing, and I think if you ask me sort of like, what's the one tragedy that you experienced in your life that changed things? And one was my mother dying. And I can tell you, because I had a moment there when she died, like most of us do when someone we desperately love dies. But I think that, you can decide if you're going to believe the bullshit people tell you about yourself. That's a tragedy. Is to not be strong enough as a woman or as a human being to say, that doesn't sit right with me. There's something wrong about that. Or I feel that in my stomach, but the tragedy in my life has been when I believed the bullshit. And then I made decisions on the bullshit. As opposed to saying, you know what, thank you. And sometimes it's not even solicited, right? Their advice or their opinion is not even solicited. Thank you for saying that. And then you make your own decision and you follow your own gut and you double down on yourself and you make decisions based on what feels right for you. I think that is one of the biggest human tragedies that any human being faces, and that's universal. We all do it. But it can really take you down a path that isn't the right path for you.
Yeah, absolutely preaching to the choir on that front. I 1,000% agree. I think, yes, you can be victimized, but if you want to assume victimhood, I think there's that reminder that there is that choice. And again, it's what's that narrative that you're buying into, and how is that serving you?
I think let's do something really fun and British right now. Let's refer back to Shakespeare. So I studied a lot of Shakespeare. I was an English major in college, and I love Shakespeare. And this is very, appropriate for being right here in London. Fantastic. Talking about you today. But So there's this moment in Othello, right? The one of the villainous character. I believe I'm getting this right, and forgive me because I'm speaking to a British audience, so I could be like crucifying myself here.
Probably know about British history more than the rest of us. Don't worry about it.
There's Iago, and he's always whispering things in Othello's ear, and then Othello goes on to kill Desdemona, who he actually loves because he believes Iago. And I think that the best thing anybody can do for themselves, especially as they're trying to pursue a dream, because again, it is so important to say over and over again, and I don't think we talk about this enough, to be underemployed or underutilized in life is soul crushing. And we always talk about when people come in and they're depressed and anxious, so often psychotherapists aren't trained to be like, it's just like your general dream not being met. Like, what do you really feel like you were meant to do and you're not doing, and how does that eat away at you every single day? And so I think that learning how to identify who are the Iagos in your life and get the fuck away from them is like a huge life lesson. Just like cut them out, you know? And sometimes that's so hard because sometimes that's actually family members who don't believe in you. Yeah. And in my own case, I can tell you that there were people who have been very close to me in my own life who at times legitimately thought, like, what are you doing? I don't get it. I don't understand. Why can't you live like a more simple life? Like, why can't you do X? Why can't you do Y? And at some point you have to decide, how much time and energy am I going to spend trying to convince people of who I am? Or am I just going to say, again, thank you for your opinion, and then make your own decision?
Work at it and let the results speak for themselves.
Yeah.
When you make your comeback 5 years later.
Yeah, and maybe you don't. Like, I think that's also another thing that Americans are really good at, is we're really good at failing. Like, we're really good at failing and being like, oh shit, learning lesson, right? We don't lose our sense of humor generally about failing the way other cultures do. I mean, some cultures, it's like a big deal to fail. I mean, like, you know, they become, historically they could commit suicide because they failed at something. It's tragic. Where I think Americans just have this like natural resilience and like, okay, that didn't work out, but like this can, or, you know, that kind of constant optimism is also really hopeful and nice to be around. And, you know, if I can do anything to influence the companies that we end up investing in or the people around me, it's to keep them optimistic and hopeful, because there is so much to be hopeful for. And I think the tides are changing. If I can do this, oh my God, if I can do this, that's just like a testament to itself that other people can do this.
Amazing. Nell, so amazing to have you here on the show. You beat me to the final traditional closing question, which was around one tragedy, and actually preferred to leave it on a high note anyway. Sure. How can people get in touch? Give us a bit more detail. Like, who do you want to hear from?
Yeah, well, we want to hear from anybody who has an idea. Absolutely. And even if you don't think that you fit into the cohort of who we're investing in, again, this is an inclusive fund. So again, I always say the example, like if two bros come to us with an idea, we will look at it. We'll look at everything that crosses our table. At least we're trying to. So we can, you know, be reached at revenge.capital, which is our website. And you go into Typeform and you fill it out and you put in your pitch there. And we'll start doing a lot more activations around the UK as well to meet people and to get out of the London bubble, as they say.
Yeah,
and
fantastic.
Hit other parts of the country. I want to look at Wales. I want to look at Scotland. I want to look at Ireland as well.
Very Labour of you.
Well, it's so funny you say that, because I just think that's like natural. Yeah. I actually know a guy in the US who his entire investment thesis, and he's an incredible record, and he won't look at any deals that are West Coast, East Coast. So he stays away from New York, and he stays away from LA, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and invests entirely in what's considered central US. And he's done very, very well because he's hitting people who don't, again, traditionally get easy access to funding, and he's making those ideas happen.
So contrarian. So as fantastic as it is that you'll look at everything, what's the decision-making process, at least to like get through the next sort of rounds? How are you going to filter through?
We have different criteria that we're starting to set out for that, right? So it has to feel, I think it has to feel, as I say to Charlotte, I was talking to her today, one of my coworkers, it has to feel like there's some sort of sexiness about it. Like, is there some sort of disruption? Like, what's the, like, do you want to ask it out again? Is there a there across the table? Whether like the founder just like amazes you, or their idea or what they've accomplished really like gets you going. And you'd be really proud to say like, this is a company that I'm investing in. So I think it's a gut thing to begin with. And then you do the due diligence, because a lot of people can sell you a story, and a lot of people will sell you a story, especially when they need money. And many of the things that we're seeing, like we'll look across all stages, not necessarily like really late stage, although we can find the financing for really late stage deals, which take like they're much more capital intensive. We're talking about like 50 million, 100 million plus. We do have money for follow-on capital. So we'll look at anything from the beginning of an idea to, I would say our sweet spot would be around Series A, where you're writing out checks for like, let's say $2 to $5 to $10 million.
Perfect. Can we translate any of those gut instinct heuristics to practical tips that founders can be like, yeah, I've got it, I'm going to send through my pitch deck, or maybe that's not quite for me?
Yeah, I think one of the things I would say to founders when they're sending their material through is just be really concise and really clear. Like, this is how much my company, don't try to hide anything, because we're going to find it. We're very sophisticated investors. We have a big team behind us who are looking at the due diligence, and that's not to scare anyone away. It's just like eventually we're going to ask the question that you're already trying to dodge. And I'll probably get to it a lot quicker than other people, because I'm kind of like, no bullshit.
Ex-journalist.
Yeah, exactly. So I think just being really honest, just coming and saying like, this is how much I've made, this is how much I've spent trying to get the idea off the ground. This is where I think the company is going to go. Here's my P&L. Here are the actual numbers. And this is how much I'm looking to raise. And this is my valuation. I think that valuation is really interesting, because they always kind of say it, and we generally don't hear very realistic valuations. And that's been a little bit disappointing as I've become a more seasoned investor. Because, and it's, by the way, I say that having also been on the other side of the table, having to negotiate these things with, I'm the one saying, here's our valuation, hoping investors going to invest in. So it's about being kind of really thorough in your research as to how you got to the valuation you got to, not just, I want to stick a big number on it because I don't want to give a lot of my company away.
Yeah. All right.
So
fantastic. Great practical tips. And now, are there any final words of wisdom you'd like to leave this episode on?
Oh my God, just keep going.
Resilience, grit.
Yeah, just please, like whatever, double down on yourself and keep going.
Love that.
All the time. Yeah, 100%. It sounds so cheesy, but I really do believe that like every single person here is born to do something. And so many people suffered in my office with not knowing what that was. And part of life's journey is to just like really like pull it through and then get out of whatever your belief system is, get out of God's way. So many of us, you're laughing because everyone's in their own way all the time.
Yeah.
Just get out of your own fucking way.
Yeah.
And get on with things.
Yeah.
Do what you were meant to do here with conviction.
You only live once.
Oh, and that, when we go back to sort of the big tragedy, when my mother passed away, I was in a room alone with her and she died in my arms. And she was an oncology nurse, and she died on the oncology floor where she was a nurse and helped other people die for over 30 years. So it was this really like full circle moment for her. And the minute she died, and the moment she died in her last breath, this is actually kind of funny. I said, oh shit. Because it was like the gone. Like you can envision. And my mom was an oncology nurse. I was a psychotherapist. So we talked a lot about death. She was sick for over 2 years. So we had a lot of time, and we lived together. So we were like joking about death. Her gravestone was up before she even died. Like I wish someone had done a documentary on us, because it would have been fascinating to watch that go down. And I think we could have really helped people sort of grieve before the actual grief process starts post-death. Yeah. But when she actually died, I went, oh shit. Because there was this like realization in me that like, oh, she's like never really going to talk to me again, which is like hard to actually imagine when you're so close to somebody. But the second thought was, oh shit, I better live. And I think if you've ever been that close to death, then there's like your foot is on the gas pedal every single day, because it sounds so lame, but I think the older you get, the more you realize. And as I approach 50, you start to do the thing that all the older people do, which is like, how many more Christmases do I have? Yeah. Like it's so messed up.
Yeah.
But you actually start to think about that. And then you're like, again, like if I can show people that if you're open to it and you manifest and you keep at it every day, they're like, you only live once. Like YOLO is so true. Just like get it done and go for it as much as you possibly can.
No, such powerful words. This really resonates as well. I think I've spoken on other episodes about those life-changing moments. A friend of mine had a similar experience where, again, his mum passed away in his arms, and it was that switch, and it was that light switch moment, and he completely changed his life. And selfishly, I would love to have that same, as much as we know, when you live once, YOLO, etc., etc., there are those, like you said, your oh shit moment that, like, how can you shortcut that until it actually happens? Like, I'm almost like, I want to bypass,
right?
I want to bypass that pain. I don't want to have to feel, even just listening to you, I feel like I'm on the verge of tears just listening to your story. So it's like, but I also want that like deep realization, deep visceral time's running out. But it's like, is there a way to like really get that like in there without the pain,
without the suffering? Listen, suffering is the gateway to the Phoenix process, right? Suffering is like when we sit in the ashes and we burn ourselves up with grief and pain. That's when the Phoenix can rise. So I get what you're saying. If you haven't actually had that moment, I'm going to do a little psychotherapy on you, right?
Love it. Bring it on. Okay. Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you.
I would say that you have had that moment. Maybe it's been a slightly watered down version of that moment. But I think if you sat down at a cafe later on this afternoon and you wrote down sort of the top 5 or 10 moments in your life that were really pivotal and you really remembered them, then you've already had that moment. And I think the second thing I would say is that's why storytelling is so critical, right? It's the stories we hear that can really change the trajectory of our lives. I've had brief conversations in my life. I remember walking through a park in the West Village right after I had kids, and I was going to give up working to be a stay-at-home mom. And I was with another woman who hadn't. And she looked at me, and she was tall. She had a big, like, kind of a stature around her, right? And she said, that's fine. You can do that. Or you can stay in the game. And she went, your call. And there was something about the way she said it that I was like, fuck you, I'm not stopping. It was like this reverse psychology moment. And it was so small, but it was so pivotal. And I think those moments when somebody, it could even be a stranger says something to you and you're like, damn. Or the people who took a risk for you before, don't forget. The people who did open that door, the people who did believe in you. Because as much as there's going to be, listen, in life, there's going to be so many more people who don't believe in you than the people who do. Isn't that ironic? At least that's my experience. At least that's the experience of most people I know. That there's a lot of hangers on that are dragging you down, that don't believe in your dream, and there's only a couple people that do. You only need one. So maybe if you haven't had that tragic moment, find that one person who every day is like, keep going. I believe it. You're going to do it. And pursue those relationships and let go of the ones that are more, negative in your life. So
love that. Now, you are so spot on the money because literally my plan after this was to go and sit in a cafe.
Really? Oh my God. Will you keep it?
Yeah, I'm going to. So now I've got my homework.
So we're going to do this. You're going to do your homework. And then in a year from now, we're going to sit down and we're going to meet and you're going to go, holy shit.
Revisit it.
Oh my God. And you're going to be like blown away by what actually happened.
I think I already know what I would write down. I think immediately as I was listening to you there, I think I know what would come up. And you're right.
Is there anything you've been too scared to say out loud?
I don't think so.
Because people ask me those dreams, and sometimes I'm like quietly saying it because I'm like almost embarrassed to say what they are.
As in dreams or tragedies?
Well, there's tragedies, but like anything that you write down on a piece of paper that you want to manifest. Are there things that you've never said out loud that you actually really want to do, but you'd be too embarrassed to say them?
I like how we're turning the tables here. You're interviewing me.
I'm just curious.
I don't think so.
That's great.
I don't know. Yeah, I think I am like you to a much lesser degree, being that outlier. And I do see myself very much, with all the different roles and hats that we wear in life, being a big sister is the one that I think I do the best and the one where I feel the most natural and at ease and zone of genius or, whatever. And I think part of that is being a big sister to so many other women as well, even if they're older, younger or whatever, but that for me, the fire and the indignation around gender inequality isn't so much my own, I don't assume victimhood. It's more what I do see happening to the other women. And yeah, I don't know. I think I also grew up in I love with psychoanalyzing.
But
I grew up in a very strong like matriarchal family unit.
yeah.
And I just, some of us just, we was like, oh, where do you get your confidence from or whatever. And I think just growing up, I was such a confident child, and I think it's an upward upward spiral. So like last night I was talking to a friend about like healthy habits and how she's eating better and sleeping better, and it just kind of makes you do even better once you kind of start getting into that. And it's kind of the same with confidence and dreams, and back to your question around like saying these things out loud, because my deepest burning desire for as long as I can remember was to be...
Wait till what I'm doing.
Do you want to guess then, actually, seeing as you've already figured me out? Do you want to guess what it could be? My childhood ambition?
To own a whole network.
Oh.
Because you should be running one.
That's where...
Just saying. If you have a little business man.
I mean, I'm really admiring Alex Cooper at the moment. I'm like, oh, wow. No, I mean, that definitely didn't cross 5-year-old Steph's mind.
Yeah.
Have another... You're not a million miles away. You're in the right ballpark. Like a classic childhood dream.
Ooh.
I'm putting you on the spot, aren't I?
Yeah. Tell me. To win an award for... Like, ours would be like, I guess, an Emmy or something like that.
To be an actress.
Oh, to be an actress.
So I think that was already, I knew, and I said that to everyone. You're saying about writing things down, saying that I would go up to adults genuinely as a 5, 6, 7-year-old, and I'd just start chatting to people. And we'd go on holiday very often, and we would be in bars, and I would just go and talk to people. And it's that pure confidence of a child, there's no just like, hey, it's like
super extrovert
as kids. You're like, hey, now I'm Steph, do you want to be my friend, kind of thing. And I would just tell them, and you do get asked that classic question as well, right? Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the arrogance of saying to them, I will tell you not what I want to be, but what I'm going to be. Like, do you want me to sign here?
And you would say that.
I would be like, I'm gonna be like, my name's gonna be in lights. Like, do you want my autograph now or later, basically?
Yeah.
And started laughing off camera there.
It's amazing.
And I think that just like those early years and how much they shape you, and having such an inspirational mother, and again that very like strong matriarchal family unit as well, being the firstborn, I think there's headwinds and tailwinds in life. And so I think when we look at the tip of the social hierarchy, I'm one peg down from the top of the food chain, right? Like, I'm white, I'm English is my first language, I'm able-bodied, etc. So like I've just one away from being a man, basically. And so I'm aware of those privileges as well. And so I think that's kind of like the start of that upward cycle. And then the funnier thing, without being so show-offy, just because I was telling a friend this last night as well, the funny part of this, and this is like a really unexpected, like, this is a really unexpected confidence building strategy. Is
I think people need to hear this.
I like how this is turning into the Nell show now.
No.
I'm your guest.
I'd much rather have a conversation than you.
Great, fantastic.
It's much more interesting.
I'll tell you this really quickly. So I was a really clumsy child. And again, linking back to my deep burning ambition of wanting to be an actress, there was this open casting call for this TV ad, and I was besides myself. I mean, if you think that I'm high energy and confident now, like 7-year-old Steph was like a ball of energy. So excitable. I was absolutely beside myself. I was like, oh my God, this opportunity. And where this company was hosting this open audition was in this foyer of this, not even a foyer, but like a bar in this hotel. And it was lower down, it was kind of like lower level, but it was all kind of open and had this humongous sweeping staircase going round to this area where they were doing the casting. And because I'm so besides myself, I
see where this is going.
You can see where this is going.
Yeah.
And I think the memory stuck so much because of how much it hurt falling down these stairs, tumbling my way down in front of everyone, in front of the directors and everyone else at this audition and everything else. And it's funny because it's like, once you've embarrassed yourself a few times, you're like, okay, get used to it. And I think bringing it back now to today and as an adult and entrepreneurs and confidence and female founders and all the rest of it is we need to, in order to exercise our resilience muscle and risk tolerance, it's like exercising any other muscle, and we need to come out of that comfort zone, retreat, go out a bit further again, retreat, go out a bit further. And that's how you go. Like, I'm in my weightlifting era at the moment, so it's like you go a bit heavier, you recover, go a bit heavier, recover. And every time you do it and you see no one died, nothing happened. And again, it's like just embarrassing. Like, I think also I talk a lot about the spotlight effect in psychology, because you saying before about how people get in their own way. No one is paying as much attention to you as you think that they are.
100%.
No one's going to remember.
Yeah.
So you may as well just go for it.
Yeah. So are you going for the acting?
I'm reliving my childhood ambition through the public speaking.
That's so
But
sweet.
yeah, I mean, if Steven Spielberg wants to get in touch,
hello. I mean, come on.
Be open to having a little chinwag. But
isn't it funny though? Because that is the actual process of evolvement, which is how do you get back to your childhood self?
It's a real thing for me at the moment. It's a real revisit for the first time. This is what I'm talking, because I forgot about it.
Yeah.
And just really
that joy. I think tapping into that joy.
Yeah.
Because joy is not like, you have to work for joy. I think about that every day. Like, because people always say to me, like, God, you seem so positive and you seem so happy. You do wake up this way. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, can be really fucking mad and angry, but I like present differently.
Yeah, same.
And I have to reach for joy. Yeah. It's not easy. And I think, again, like in my field, I was shocked, and also in my own life, how difficult it is to achieve happiness. Right?
I don't think we should even strive for happiness.
And that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. Like, we should strive to be moved.
Like,
right? That's what we really want as human beings. But I mean, some happiness is nice.
Yeah, of course.
And it's not, it's like hard won. Yeah. Or happiness can be really hard won.
Yeah.
So that's cool that you're like going back to that little girl self and playing.
And I completely forgot, because there was this one specific moment that I remember so perfectly, which was on the playground of my school when I was 14 years old. And my self-confidence took an absolute nosedive. It was an overcast, cloudy morning, and it was almost like a switch went off in my mind, where I was just like, what? Genuine was like, what have I been thinking?
And no one said to you anything of that nature,
because they just kind of went off in a different course. And since then, it now turns out there's this study that's come out that's shown that actually prepubescent girls go through this this
tumble,
this cliff is almost off a cliff. I was like, oh, okay, that checks out. So it is, since then I've had this time to now remember that and have this renaissance. Yeah. Anyway, Nell, that's more than enough about me. This was supposed to be your interview.
It's so refreshing not to talk about myself, to be honest.
No, I love it. Huge congratulations. So incredibly exciting. I'm so glad that you've bounced back, that you've exploded back onto the scene. I would love to get involved. I'm so happy that I've given you a platform as well to get this out to more founders.
Really, lovely the work you're doing.
Likewise.
And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to email you after this, and I'm going to come up with another goal. And we're going to sit here in a year and go, which one did you do?
I'm up for that. Yeah, I'm up for that. Yeah. Amazing. That's about, I'll hold you to that.
Like, completely crazy. Like, we're just going to go for it.
Love that. I'm getting excited just thinking about it.
It's going to be like, I'm going to be at the 500 million mark.
Nice.
Yeah.
Stick another zero. Why not?
Let's just keep going.
Love that. Yeah. Love that. Let's revisit that next year.
For sure.
Thank you so much, Nell. And thank you so much for tuning in. Really hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you haven't already, you know what to do. Please hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost a thing. It takes 2 seconds. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time.